Hey, how about you, everybody? Welcome into the first episode of the Auburn Live Show, Kicking It with Keith. How you like that, Keith?
I've heard better. I've heard better.
That's all I could come up with, dude.
But we keep trying, keep working
Yeah.
on it. We'll figure it out.
I am your temporary host, at least for today, Jeffrey Lee, senior recruiting editor for Auburn Live on 3. And if you're not a member of that site, now is the best time to join. We have a killer deal going on right now. $1, 4 quarters, 10 dimes, 20 nickels. I think my math is correct. $1 for a full entire year of Auburn Live on 3 coverage, recruiting coverage, football coverage, baseball coverage, basketball recruiting, basketball. We've got it all for you for $1 a year right now. Go look and sign up for yourself. Auburn Live on 3. I am with Keith Niebuhr today. Keith joined our site last week, been killing it. Auburn had a big weekend this past weekend with some big official visitors. We're here to talk about that. Keith, overall opinions on what you've seen the last couple of days from Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, no commitments, and that's really the metric that everybody seems to use. Hey, did we get any commitments? Who did my team land? Who is my team about to land? So no commitments, and in the old days that would be like, okay, what went wrong? But in this era of NIL and kids waiting it out again, and waiting it out and waiting it out, you're really trying to lay the groundwork for the future, for future commitments, for commitments to happen down the road. And if that's your metric, then it was a success, it seems like, because 8 kids there, 5 or 6 of them were 4 stars, depending upon how you look at the rankings, whether it was on 3 rankings or the on 3 consensus, which is an industry composite, so to speak. If you look at it that way, you say, okay, well, my team that I follow, being Auburn, if you're an Auburn fan, did pretty well, because when you read the individual updates, and I only did one of them, you and Cole Pinkston did the majority of it. And also, Jeff, you did a great war room that gave the behind the scenes. Here's what really happened. When you added it all up, when you looked at all those stories, the war room and the individual updates and other things we posted on the board that we heard about these visits, it looks pretty good for Auburn, because of those 8 guys, you could say that Auburn probably has a legitimate chance with maybe all 8. I would probably say 6 or 7. There's 1 or 2 that I'm not so sure about. But overall, when you add it all up, you're thinking, okay, they did pretty good. They did maybe really good, because kids that liked Auburn already seem to like Auburn more. Kids that didn't know as much about Auburn's now kind of on their mind a little bit. And but again, it's going to be a waiting game, because a lot of these kids, and Auburn staff knows that a lot of these kids want to know that these guys are going to be around to coach them. And so they're probably going to want to see a few games to see what they look like. And, that's where negative chatter, and every staff says it, that's where negative chatter and negative stuff can hurt you, because then it gets in the ears of other kids, of the kids and other schools, or in those same ears, saying, hey, where's the stability there? So if Auburn can overcome that, it's going to be a heck of a class, I think.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a while. The best Auburn can do right now is put itself in a position that if it makes some noise this fall, it will be in position to have that a big recruiting class. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
I mean, and you talk about the commitments and all the fans and subscribers. That's what you talk about, that metric being measuring and the success of this summer, I guess you could say. But really, you got to look ahead. You got to look ahead to the future and what these guys are doing, positioning themselves, setting themselves up, that if they and I wrote this in the war room, sans a total tank job by Auburn in the fall, I feel good about a lot of these kids that were visiting today. But like you said, they want, like Jelani Thurman, Joshua Horton, are they guys that want to see? I mean, they have really good relationships with these coaches. Ruben Bain has really good relationships with these coaches. Keldrick Faulk, a lot of these guys, and as easy as it is for us to say, man, choose the school and not the coaches, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. These kids build relationships with these coaches, and that's who they want to play for. You even heard Ruben Bain say, the opportunity to come in and play early, and not only play early at Auburn, but play and learn under Rock Bellantonia, who he's known since he was 9 or 10 years old. That's a big deal. And these guys, like you said, want to know that these coaches are going to be here. Now, some of these recruits, and not just the guys that visited this weekend, are going to commit. As everybody knows, commitments are non-binding. Commitments to me are nothing more than a kid saying publicly, Auburn is my leader. because nothing really is binding until December. So a couple of these guys I would expect at some point to make a commitment. We've seen some commitment dates already set before the season. Some of these guys are going to wait and see how this team shakes out. I think the first half of the season, LSU at home, Penn State at home. After that, I think we'll know a lot more about how the season, and ultimately the class is going to shake out. Keith, you talked about some guys that you're not sure of this past weekend. Hit me with those.
Well, if I could just backtrack for a second, I guess, so on the one hand, and I don't want to just sound like, we don't want to ever come across as just straight sunshine pumpers. I mean, we think that they did really well this weekend, and we know kids are waiting. Now, the flip side of that is there are multiple schools where kids want to see more in the fall and are concerned about the stability of a staff, and sometimes they land big commitments too. So, obviously there's some yin and some yang. So even though it is a viable excuse, Auburn's got to figure out a way to overcome that as well. You can't just go into the fall with 2 commitments. I mean, they've still got to land kids.
Yeah, right.
We're just saying here's the reason why, one of the reasons why they haven't yet. But again, that's their job as a staff to figure out, okay, how do we overcome this and how do we get some of these guys on board now? Because if you can get some guys on board, then you can create momentum on the recruiting trail and it leads to other commitments and all that. So in other words, we're not just sticking up for the Auburn staff here. We're just recognizing that it is a hurdle for them, but one they have to overcome as well. They can't just wait until six games into the season to start landing commitments, and they know that too. The staff at Auburn knows that. But so some of the guys I'm not that sure about, Jeff. I mean, C.J. Allen, the linebacker. I want to hear more. I think you've had some. And I'll let you talk more about this. He's the linebacker from Georgia. And
Lamar County.
Yes, and we know Barnesville, Georgia. We know that Georgia likes him a lot. I just think if Georgia pushes for him, they're going to be awfully hard to beat. But you have some intel on that too, so I'll let you kind of take over there.
Well, Georgia is in a position to pretty much cherry pick who they want, same as Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson to a certain extent. So I think who Georgia gets, who they want. Where does C.J. Allen sit on their board? There's Troy Bowles. There's Raylan Wilson, who's committed to Michigan, but he's down. I think he's in Tampa, right, Keith?
Yeah. Raylan
Tallahassee,
yep.
Lincoln, I believe. Tallahassee, Lincoln, T.J.
Yes.
Davis neighborhood.
Yep.
And then who else was the other one? Troy Bowles, Raylan Wilson.
Well, there's one other guy.
Grayson Pup Howard.
There you go.
Grayson Pup Howard. I mean, these are stud guys. So is C.J. Allen, depending on who you ask.
Yeah.
So, does Georgia load up with those guys? Do they get who they want? And if so, where does that leave C.J. Allen? Now, we both know from talking to other people, especially sources at Georgia, that as of right now, C.J. Allen is a take. And if that's the case, and come July 9th when he's going to commit, I wrote this in the war room, I'd be shocked if Georgia wants him on July the 9th. I'd be shocked if he doesn't commit to Georgia.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, if things happen with other guys and C.J. Allen doesn't feel as wanted by Georgia as he does at Auburn, because Auburn made sure he knew that they want him. Georgia might want some other guys, including him, but they want him. And that could be big. Christian Robinson's a fantastic recruiter. We've been covering Auburn guys for the past few years, losing to him. So I think it's at least worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that it was a waste of time or anything like that. It's just one that if all things are equal, I'm not loving Auburn's chances.
Me too.
You know what I mean? That's all. But then some people say, well, I don't want their backups. I don't want their scrubs. Shit. Well, first of all, there are no. If you're on the list for Georgia that high, you ain't no scrub. Okay, it's just you take the guys that you want. If it's a high priority guy for you guys, then it doesn't really matter where somebody is on somebody else's board, right? And I think it actually could be a blessing in disguise that Auburn is not in great shape for D. Creighton anymore because, I think they feel like there's some guys that probably are a little bit higher on the board than that. So But so I'm getting my oil changed as we're doing this. It's hilarious. I'm trying to balance talking to Jeff and all this stuff. And that's another reason I'm not on video today. But no, Jeff, you're right. You make good points. I mean, this is a guy that all things are equal. You don't love Auburn's chances, but all things are never always equal. There's always multiple variables in play. And I've heard nothing but good things about this player. You're right. Depending upon who you talk to, some people really love him, and I know On3 has him rated higher than the rest of the industry. And On3's rating is probably on par with what Auburn thinks of him, quite frankly.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
On3's got him as a top 100 overall recruit, the number 4 linebacker in the country. And they've got him ranked as the number 4 linebacker in the country, ahead of the spinning wheel. Damn it. Internet.
Well ahead of D. Creighton, who we wrote last week is now trending away from Auburn. So
ahead of everyone we mentioned except for Troy Bowles. Troy Bowles being the number 3 backer.
Yeah. Well, and you were saying who was another guy. Well, let's go down the list of guys. You got the list in front of you. I mean,
To me, Keldrick Faulk. We're talking about visitors from this past weekend. Right? Yeah. Keldrick Faulk.
Well, we both love Auburn's chances there, right?
We do, and I think that's I hate to use the must-get term, but I really feel like if Auburn were to miss on him at such a huge position of need, man, he looked good yesterday. He was Keith. I know you had measurements on some of these guys, but I think it was 6'4", 260 something.
6'5 and a half, 265.
Damn.
So again, and that's an edge rusher. So what if he can continue to hold that weight and be an edge rusher? I mean, wow. And if he can't, he grows into a strong side end, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff, I mean, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes here, but the word I keep getting on him is that Auburn sees him as being a small town country kid that fits the DNA of the quintessential Auburn player.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? He is an Auburn player. He is an Auburn kid. He's that kind of guy. Hard nose, no ego, and super athletic for his size too. So he's got a lot of tools that that they're looking for. And again, they think he fits the culture there. Is that kind of right in line with what you're hearing?
As absolutely what I was hearing yesterday while he and his mother and younger brother, his younger brother's a stud guy.
Yeah.
I mean, his younger brother, JJ Faulk, is, I thought he was his older brother. This kid, he's a man. He's a man. Now Faulk visited Auburn. He's already visited Clemson. He's going to hit Florida and Florida State over the next 2 weeks and then make his decision at the end of July or 1st of August, which to me bodes well for Auburn because he said he's planning on being back to Big Cat at the end of July. I wrote about this in the War Room, but Faulk, he lost his father at a very, very early age. His mother's done a fantastic job with him and his brothers raising them. But they got to listen to Trevon Reed's story about losing his mother and how Auburn was there for him. That meant a lot to them. I think that meant a lot to his mother. And, his mother raised these kids and as a single parent, you don't want to see those people, your children, go too far away from home when you're so protective of them. That's why I think there's another angle here to Auburn being that guy. Keldrick's a quiet country boy type. I think he gets lost in Tallahassee. I think he gets lost at Florida, where you've got 60,000 jort wearing Keith Niebuhr's walking around. You've got
listen, buddy, I've seen more jorts. I lived in Atlanta for 10 years, and I saw more jorts in Atlanta.
Yeah, your oil just got changed. Hey, Keith, another, and it's not just one, man. I thought that was a huge visit for the Langston Hughes quartet. We saw Bo Hughley come over from Fairburn, along with Jelani Thurman flying in from Las Vegas. His 7-on-7 tournament, left that on Friday afternoon to be in Auburn this weekend for an official visit. Joshua Horton was there, and then Terrence Love comes over for an unofficial visit on Saturday. Keith, what do you think about this Langston 4?
Yeah, I like where Auburn sits with Joshua Horton, the big defensive tackle. I think you got to keep an eye on Georgia. I think in a normal year, somebody pointed this out to me the other day. They said, if this was 5 years ago, he's an absolute take at Georgia. But now Georgia, with all the buzz nationally, they're recruiting from coast to coast. And so, again, that's not – I know people get tired of hearing, well, God, is Auburn only going to get guys if Georgia doesn't want them? Well, sometimes that's the situation you're faced with. And then it becomes, can you develop these guys and all that stuff? But remember, the top guys are all bunched very close together. Okay. So it's not a terrible thing if you like the guy. Auburn was on Joshua Horton very early. Florida is now rearing its head and trying to make a move. But Jeff, I keep hearing that the real sleeper here is UCF. It's UCF, and that he visited there recently, and they're talking up the Big 12 and saying, you can contribute right away, where maybe Auburn's got a little bit deeper of a D-line room, and it might be a little harder. So I think UCF has emerged as a sleeper. But at the end of the day, you have to like the position in which Auburn sits right now, and I think Auburn feels that way too.
Yeah, I was surprised yesterday doing some digging on him, and the school Auburn was most concerned with was UCF.
Well, there you go. There you go.
So that's lining up, and for some of the same reasons, Keith. I mean, UCF was almost saying, you're going to go to Auburn and want to transfer out, because you're not going to get any playing time, and so you might as well just come on to UCF. And didn't really think he was an SEC guy, but we talked about Georgia and who they have above people, and we know Jamal Jarrett, 4-star defensive tackle from North Carolina. We know Sydir Mitchell, 4-star defensive tackle from New Jersey, both of whom will be back in Auburn in 2 weeks, but I think both were in Georgia this past weekend. I know Jarrett went to Georgia. I know Rockwest McElderry was in Georgia this weekend.
Yeah, don't forget, Georgia's got another tackle they're high on too that Auburn likes, and that's the Jordan Hall kid out of West Jacksonville down in Florida. So they've got an enormous board. They're not going to be able to take all these guys, okay?
Right.
You know what I mean? And you have to look, if you're Auburn, that's where you've got to start. I mean, you want to win head-to-head battles. Don't kid yourself. You want to get Sydir Mitchell over Georgia. You want to get Jamal Jarrett over Georgia. But if you don't, because again, right now you're fighting a lot of different things out there. You won 6 games last year. You had a really weird and not so great offseason at times yes, exactly. So you're fighting all that stuff, and people get tired of hearing excuses. If I was an Auburn fan, I'd be saying, Keith and Jeff, why are you two jerks making excuses year after year? Well, let's go back. There's been some real challenges. I mean, Gus's staff was on the hot seat eternally. That's a real challenge. We're not making excuses. We're just pointing out things that cause you to create challenges for you. And even with those challenges, you're still expected to land players, though. And we expect them to land players, too. And they expect to land players.
Sure.
At some point, the excuses, and they're not I'm not saying they're making excuses, but at some point, fans just want to see results. So we understand that. But we have to point out, to be fair to all sides, that there are some unique challenges. That said, Auburn is heavily involved and heavily in the mix with a lot of talented players along the defensive line, including Joshua Horton. So at this point in time, I think Auburn lands him. I mean, they've got his friend committed, Terrence Love, very in deep with 2 more of his teammates that are just in his class, and then a quarterback, Aaron Noland, in the 2024 class. So I think, and obviously Langston Hughes kids have done things at Auburn before. It's a school that's very friendly to Auburn. Montavious Atkinson was a very good player, underrated player at Auburn.
Very.
Sometimes we look and we say, well, he didn't do anything in the NFL, or he didn't make the NFL. Well, Montavious Atkinson was a really good player on some damn good Auburn defenses. Okay. So Auburn's got cred at that school. Okay. And in that community. And so I like where they sit with him.
Montravius Atkinson, man, dude, that's the longest guy I've ever seen. When we talk about length and arms, man, that dude could scratch his ankles without bending down.
Yeah.
Do you remember how long he was?
Yeah, he also looked like he was 47 years old when he was a sophomore in high school.
Let's see who.
One of the nicer guys to ever roll through there.
Ruben Bain was. Oh yeah, he was awesome. Ruben Bain.
Okay, now that's another one, Jeff, that I have a little bit of concern about. But go ahead, you start off. I'm sorry.
No, I think we both agree. We talked about this off the air. Ruben Bain, to me, isn't. I think you even wrote this Saturday night. Ruben Bain, Miami is a Miami Auburn battle brewing. I think so, especially after this weekend. I think it's going to be tough to get him out of his hometown. I think there's some things that could work in Auburn's favor, but Rock Bellantoni early playing time. But I still think when it comes down to it, it's going to be tough to get him out of Miami.
Now, can I say something?
Yes.
There is. Go ahead. Well, you finish your thought. I'm sorry, Jeff.
That's it. I wanted to bounce that out. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, can I kind of mention one thing that's happening down there?
Yes. You do it. No. I think it's fair. I mean, it's all on the books, right?
Yeah. So an interesting scenario has happened down there, and we haven't really put it out on the board or anything like that. But Roland's, gosh, am I going to forget his name? Roland Smith, a very good coach at Miami Central, was hired by the Miami staff during the offseason. And we need to look in a little bit more into this. But, there's kind of these rules that maybe you can't follow coaches, your high school coach, to a college if they're not on the field. But we need to look more into that. But there is something that potentially could be a snag. I don't know. I almost regret even saying it. But just know that people are looking into something to see some things. Does that make any sense? Or should we
absolutely?
cut that out?
No, it's public knowledge. Like, and Auburn dealt with this, I think, from Opelika. I think it was Ben Blackman when Gus was here. He wanted to hire Ben as off the field guy, analyst type role, and couldn't do so without not recruiting Opelika for 2 years. So if you do sign a coach, and if you want to put him on the field, a legit position, then all bets are off. You're good to go. But if you hire him for and we saw this back, 10 years ago, people were doing this just to get kids, hiring high school coaches and sticking them in the, in the film room just to get kids to come with them. And this rule was put in place by the NCAA that if you hire a high school coach for an off the field position, you can't recruit that school for, I think it was 2 years. And if you do, the kid is 2 years ineligible. So as it stands, if that's still the case, and we both believe it is, but we'll do some more digging. If that's still the case and Miami hired his former head coach, then Ruben would not be able to go to Miami and be immediately eligible. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't know how enforceable that is anymore. I don't know if Miami gives a shit.
Yeah. Well, and also let me point out one thing. I know everybody wants me to be go Auburn, all the time. And I love covering Auburn, but that coach is a great guy. So I'm like, you're always a little, you're always sometimes torn in our business because you get close to people that end up at other schools that are either recruiting against Auburn or playing against Auburn. And it can be a little tricky, but yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on it. But he's a great player. His interview, I mean, he just seems like a cool kid. Fantastic. This would be a fantastic get. And Rock Bellantoni and him, and you mentioned this, have a great relationship. In fact, I've been told that he may be, of all the guys Rock's recruiting this cycle, they may have the best relationship. So, so let's see what happens.
Awesome kid. I got to talk to him before he left. Really like him. And you know what? He's coming back. Like he said multiple times, I'll be back a couple of more times. I mean, he really likes it up here. Really likes Rock Bellantoni. Really likes the SEC and the early playing time. Look at Auburn's depth chart at edge.
And what have we always said, Jeff? And this goes back to well before I started covering Auburn in 2013. But South Florida kids like Auburn. They like being in Auburn. There's less concrete. There's less ambulances. South Florida. I love it down there, but it's wild, man. It's wild.
You like it for different reasons.
I like it for different reasons. Yeah, but it's a unique place, and Auburn's so quiet. And I was a kid that grew up in a medium-sized town, initially from Miami, but most of my formative years were in a medium-sized town like Auburn, Opelika size. So I wanted to go to the big cities, but sometimes if you're in the big cities, you like the opposite. So, I do think Auburn has a real chance, especially with Rock Bellantoni having 23 years experience as a recruiter in South Florida, to continue to make a dent down in Miami-Dade County and in the county just to the north of that, which is Broward County. Now, Palm Beach County is a little bit different. That is really Florida Gator country. It's unique to South Florida. But I think they've got a shot to do some damage on there. Again, if they can just get kids to Georgia, through Georgia and up into Auburn, they generally like it. And don't forget, so many kids from South Florida that we interviewed, Jeff, have family in Alabama and Georgia.
Right.
Almost every single one. It's amazing,
DJ Chester. I've got two more, man, and I wanted to save my dude for last. But DJ Chester, four-star offensive lineman, he was a nobody a couple of months ago when Auburn offered him. Will Friend, I think, worked with him last summer at camp, loved him. So got a really early jump on this kid. And Auburn got him in for an official visit. They were in on him early. I know Auburn feels good about where they sit right now. Obviously, things can change. People are going to come after this kid. It was his first official visit. He's going to take more. But I do like where Auburn sits as it stands now.
Yeah, that's one where you're going to know a lot more than me.
I think Cole, we'll talk about with Cole more on Thursday, but I think Cole, he knows a lot more about DJ Chester. But he was he looks good.
Well, the interesting thing is, Jeff, he's got a teammate that's a big offensive tackle, and it feels like Auburn, and who's quite honestly gotten a lot more attention than DJ has.
Who?
But it just isn't it the Owens kid?
Oh, Zechariah.
I mean, are they not at the same school? Or refresh my memory here.
I believe. Let me do a little fact checking, but I do
Yeah,
believe you're right.
I'll run my mouth here while you're fact checking. But you know, the state of Georgia has a lot of good offensive linemen this year.
Zechariah Owens.
Yeah, and so it's not all, you know, some years it's good, some years it's not good, but Auburn has quietly worked on a bunch of these guys, and guys that are realistic options. Because, you know, if you focus too much on some of the high ticket guys, the high end guys, it's okay. Well, I'll just tell you, in past years at certain schools, you know, what happens is you focus on the big name guys because all the fans want you to go after the big name guys, and so you maybe you don't keep the middle guys as warm as you need to keep them. So when you miss on the big name guys, you circle back to the warm guys. They don't want to have anything to do with you. So what Auburn seems to be doing is still recruiting the big name guys, but being realistic about it, knowing that, you know, where Auburn is right now, it's hard. Auburn's got to kind of rebuild that reputation, you know, and so they're really focusing on the middle guys. And by the way, the middle guys often end up being better than the big guys. Okay. So the guys at the top. So I like what they're doing. I like it. They're targeting guys that are realistic options, that also guys that can really play.
Absolutely. You know? And I think that takes us to our final visitor, which was Jaqueem Jackson, a little known defensive back, at least in Auburn, in Auburn fans' minds, up until a week or two ago when we found out he was coming in for an official visit. I hadn't heard of him. I had to look him up.
Yeah.
Jaqueem Jackson from Osceola down in, is it Kissimmee or Kissimmee?
Kissimmee. Hey, by the way, Frank Ford's alma mater, the great Auburn basketball player.
All right.
Yeah.
Also the alma mater of Tasharvin Bell, who we've written a couple of times that Jaqueem Jackson is. He's very close with Tasharvin. They're cousins. That
can't hurt. Yeah, that can't hurt at all, can it?
And you know who Tasharvin played with at Auburn? Secondary coach Zach Etheridge.
Yeah, I think Auburn's going to get this kid unless something changes. I'm
gonna tell you what, Keith. I got to stand next to him alone yesterday. Before he left, man, he looks. He checked in at 6'2", 184, and he looked every bit of what you would want in a cornerback. And you know, Auburn. See, Zach has been working behind the scenes to get him up here, and did so. I know Auburn really loves his length. I asked him about his wingspan. It's 77 inches, which is what. 6'5", and he's 6'2", so that's a +3.
Yeah. Now, what are the schools you're? I mean, I've heard some FSU. Who are the other main schools involved?
Tennessee and Penn State.
Interesting.
He's going to go to Tennessee or Penn State Friday. Then he's going to go to Tennessee the following weekend. And according to Jaqueem, his father came with him this trip. He's going to bring his mother back next trip, and possibly Tasharvin will also come with him. Tasharvin was going to come with him this weekend, but I really like that he's going to take a couple of visits, and he already knows he wants to come back to Auburn, bring his mom here. Well,
somebody mentioned something to me. I was just going over some of these guys, and I don't know. Does he have offers from Miami and Florida or not?
According to his On3 profile, he has offers from Penn State, Miami, yes, South Florida, yes, Tennessee, yes.
Got you doing my legwork here.
Florida State, yes. Georgia, yes.
Interesting.
Alabama, yes. Arkansas, yes. Ole Miss.
That's what's so hard. It's hard to track. You know, when did they?
Right.
When do they offer? Where do they sit on the board? But again, that stuff it's only relevant to people like me and you as we're trying to figure out where a kid's going to end up. If you're a fan, you know, really the main relevant points are, you know, does my staff want the kid? Because at a certain point, you have to trust your staff. You just do, unless they've given you a reason not to trust him. And Zach Etheridge has not given me a reason to not trust him, quite frankly, because the secondary was on point last year, and he's also recruiting. Now he took some good players, but further developed them. It was a continuation. Which, you know, if you say what was the one area that was really strong when Gus left, it was the secondary, right? Absolutely. And so it was a continuation of that, and maybe even an elevation. And now he's brought in some big name junior college play. In other words, I think he's kept it going and then some. So that's a guy I trust. But yeah, that was an interesting one. But somebody was saying, well, what if Florida's not recruiting him? What does that say about the kid? Because Corey Raymond, the DB coach extraordinaire, is now at Florida. I said, well, wait a second. Florida's only going to sign 2 or 3 corners each year, right? They're not going to. They can only take a couple guys, and Corey Raymond, just because he isn't offering a guy doesn't mean the guy. I mean, he doesn't. He's a great coach, but he didn't invent cornerback coaching. He didn't invent cornerback play. I mean, and he's a great guy too. But there's so many good players in the state of Florida, Jeff, that to me, this guy is the quintessential guy that when you go back 30 years that Auburn has feasted on in that state, a guy that's got offers, but maybe a little under the radar. I mean, Jimmy Brumbaugh, Auburn's D-line coach, had offers, but was a little bit under the radar and ends up having a great career at Auburn. That's what these guys are. Okay. That's what you're looking for. Hungry guys, no ego. You know, that kid has been so polite to you, so polite to me. And then you look at the body and then you look at the athleticism and you say, this is an Auburn kind of kid. This is what they have feasted on historically in the Sunshine State. And I don't care who else is or isn't recruiting him. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. You know, but the fact that Miami's offered the kid, now again, we don't know how strong the offer is, but the fact that Miami's offered the kid, being in South Florida where they are located, they generally do not have to leave South Florida to offer defense to find defensive backs. Right. Well, Kissimmee is not in South Florida. Kissimmee is in Orlando. Okay, that is not Miami territory. So that says a little bit because, quite frankly, and I know not everybody's a fan of Kevin Steele on these Auburn sites, but I think we can argue that he's had some pretty damn good DB evaluations through the years, right?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, Roger McCreary, Nehemiah Pritchett, Jalen Simpson wasn't even a big recruit.
No, he wasn't.
I
think he came on and finished as a 4-star, but when Auburn was on him, he was a nobody.
Yeah. So, so Miami's offer this kid. So I wouldn't worry about so much about the UF offer or not offer. I'm looking at who else is offered. FSU, which obviously, even in their terrible years, FSU usually has some pretty good defensive backs, right? And so, I heard, and I know you talked to people too, that this kid, Jaqueem Jackson, I hope I'm pronouncing all that right. When he got to Auburn on Friday, I got a text from somebody that said, this guy is a dude in all caps. Okay. And they're excited about him. And that's the most important thing.
I was trying to go back and see when are some of these offers, but I'm like you, man, at this point, know he's legit.
Well, we all get caught up in rankings and all that stuff. And he may end up being a higher ranked guy, but coaches are looking for, and I used to talk to Wesley McGriff about this when he was a DP coach at Auburn. He's looking for a certain skill set. And I won't name any names, but he ran off some 5-star guys to me once before they got to college and said, I don't like his long speed. I don't like this. I don't like that. And I'm going to tell you right now, not one of them have done anything in college that he wasn't crazy about. They all know what they're looking for. Okay. Zach Etheridge and Jeff Schmedding know what they're looking for. And this guy's long and he's athletic. And quite frankly, he comes from an area. Now he's on a really competitive team. Jeff, they've actually got a couple defensive linemen. One, Derek LeBlanc, who Auburn's on pretty heavy. I don't like their chances at all. But it's a competitive team. The practices are competitive. They're playing in a good district in Florida. So he's going up against athletic guys every week. So this looks like one of those Roger McCreary type deals. Now I hate this. I'm not going to say he's going to be a top round draft pick, but it looks like one of those. Now the question is, now that you and you're writing about him so much and everybody else is, now whose attention does that pique? You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? I'm going back through his timeline on Twitter. He received an offer from Florida, May the 20th.
Well, there you go.
3 weeks ago, he went to visit Georgia. Got was a Coach Smart picture, and all the coaches are around. And there's Will Muschamp in the back.
Yeah.
He went to Miami. He just got offered by Ole Miss. So this dude has got some legitimate offers. Went to the Miami on May 28th for a big visit with.
So somebody had just inadvertently left some of those offers.
Yeah, well, the thing is, on 3 profile, it's tough to link these stories. I think there's a couple of, our database is still going through some infancy.
Well, good. I can call back my friend and say, well, hey, I hate to break it to you, Florida did offer this kid.
Mm-hmm. May 20th, not too long ago. So
okay. So what does that tell you? That tells me that Florida offered him after, and the only reason we're bringing them up is because Corey Raymond's the DB coach there, and some people think he's one of the 3 or 4 best DP coaches in the country. So, but if they offered him May 20th, that's clearly after they went and evaluated him.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah. So there you go. So there's a little bit more confirmation, more validation. Quite frankly, not that you needed it, because again, I trust Zach Etheridge as much as any coach on this staff.
South Carolina, all these schools,
Yeah.
Penn State, Arkansas, South Carolina, Miami, Florida, Vanderbilt even has offered after a spring eval. Just going back through
Well,
his.
and now here's an interesting thing.
And guess what, Keith? He's committed to the Under Armour All-American game.
Well, here's the thing. So some people will say, well, why would you bring up the Vanderbilt offer? Well, guess what? That actually tells you, because they recruit differently than everybody else in the SEC, that tells you that he's got grades and he's probably a high character guy.
Yep.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things to like here. You know what I mean? So
really like him, really like where Auburn sits. I love the connection there with Deshaun Bell, Zach Etheridge. And I also like that he's coming back at least once more, probably be back for Big Cat as well. Keith, looking ahead real quick, man, right now we've got some guys confirmed for this coming weekend, Friday. Yeah. But also some things coming up. We talked about some commitments. Auburn needs to get over that hump, needs to figure out a way to get past those concerns. Brock Glenn went to Florida State this past weekend. I think he's going to Ohio State at some point, but Ohio State is also brought in another quarterback. And I said this last week, for Auburn's sake, I'm not really concerned about Ohio State. I think I'm probably more concerned about Florida State. But even still, I still think Auburn's.
Well, they were on him early. He visited twice before they even offered him. They offered him on the third visit. He's since been back. And then he's picked up steam since then in his mind. And again, he's said this on the record. Hey, that showed me that they weren't jumping on a bandwagon. They evaluated me. They offered me. And now he's sort of blown up since then. It hasn't been reflected in his ranking yet. Right. But I think we all think that that's coming. Ohio State, the only thing is, I think when you have a program of that stature, anytime a kid visits there, you at least have to keep an eye on it. And quite frankly, listen, if you're Texas A&M and one of your kids visits Auburn, you're concerned. I mean, Auburn's a high stature program too now. So let's not, we sit here and we talk about, they may need a guy to not be high on Georgia's board, but for them to get him. But Auburn is a high stature program. And so my point being that if a kid visits Ohio State, it's something you at least got to watch. But yeah, you have to like Auburn's chances. They've built a relationship with him. I mean, his first name technically is Auburn. He's got ties to the school. I mean, it just makes sense. So we'll see.
He's one of those guys. I think I've got it in my head, and I might be at fault for this, but he's one of those guys, in my opinion. He's Auburn's until he's not. Like nothing that happens between now and his decision time will change my mind. I'm just going to ride that. I think he's Auburn's. Auburn with all these other new schools. Keith, you talk about jumping on the bandwagon. He didn't get this attention from other schools until he made that Elite 11 finalist.
That's right. And can I mention one guy that's coming in this next weekend? Is it Anthony James?
Yes, Anthony James.
Anthony James.
Wiley, Texas.
Defensive lineman from Texas, former Texas A&M commit. And Auburn's worked pretty hard and fast. They just offered him a few weeks ago to get him to visit. Now, apparently, former Texas A&M commit. We think that Texas A&M, at least as of right now, at least Auburn thinks this, probably is not a big factor at this point. But schools to watch, and this is interesting: Utah and Washington.
Yeah,
I don't know what the connections are there. I have no idea. And Utah, obviously, let's not sell them short. They've been pretty good. Okay, and they're actually going to play an SEC team early in the season this year. So we'll see what they're really made of. But the point is, that one could be wide open. And so Auburn's bringing him in, and kind of it's going to be a chance for the whole staff. And I haven't spent a lot of time out there. This will be a chance for the whole staff to size him up, body-wise and personality-wise. And we'll see. This is one of those official visits where you're not bringing in a kid trying to land a commitment that day.
Right.
Or you're really kind of starting your this is the building points. And
kind
you need
of creeping the door open a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let me get in here a little bit.
Yeah, it worked out where he could visit, and we'll see how that goes. But that's an interesting one. Auburn's got some cred in Texas as well. So, and have done well out there.
Another guy that they're trying to kind of get in the door for, ease on in the recruitment is David Hobbs. He's a 4-star defense. I mean, the defensive linemen that visit Auburn and are going to visit Auburn has been so impressive, especially for Jimmy Brumbaugh in his first year back at Auburn. David Hobbs from J.M. Robinson in Concord, North Carolina, 4-star defensive tackle. He's coming in for an official visit. So with James, David Hobbs, we saw Joshua Horton. We've seen Keldrick Faulk, a lot of defensive linemen coming in. Jamal Jarrett, Sider Mitchell will be here next week. David Hobbs is another guy. I think Auburn just offered trying to get him in on his recruitment, getting him down this weekend.
Now, you may have heard the same, like with the kid I previously mentioned, Anthony James. They kind of want to size him up a little bit. I think I could be wrong here, but I think that part's sort of already been done here. In other words, I think Auburn already is in love with this kid.
Oh, okay.
That's what I heard. Now, I don't know, sometimes you get conflicting info, but
that sounds good.
You and I have a good friend, used to be in our business, and now he works for a college, and I won't mention his name because we don't want anybody thinking he's talking to reporters, but he used to say the Carolinas are where you go for defensive linemen. It's D-line heaven. And, that's right. I mean, that's
wow.
When you think about the guys that have come out of those two states on the defensive line, it's ridiculous. And let me point out that one school of note, I won't say which one, a school that I'm familiar with recruited Hobbs and liked him as a tight end, I heard. In other words, that's how athletic this guy is.
Oh, wow.
So I hope I'm not mixing him up with another kid. Yeah.
Listed at 6'4", 260.
Okay, so I could see that then. Yeah. So
Connor Liu.
Yeah.
Interior offensive lineman's coming in. He went to – where did he go this past weekend? He's been on a couple of visits.
Now, what's interesting with that is I think a lot of people think Auburn's got a real chance there, right? Are you hearing that? I haven't heard enough yet. I don't know enough about his
I don't really know enough about him either. He's a 3-star interior guy. I think he's kind of in the mold of the Braden Joyner. He's visited Miami. Yeah. He's visited Clemson. He's going to visit Georgia later this month. So good company for Auburn.
I guess my question would be, if Auburn's got Braden Joyner and is trying to flip Ryquez McKeldry from Georgia, that's 2 inside guys. If you take Lou, that's a third. If you got Lou, excuse me,
right?
Take him, got him, whatever. That'd be a third inside guy. So again, the fans are going to start saying, "Where are the outside guys? Where are the tackles at? When's Auburn going to start getting some of those?" So I'm just curious about the numbers and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to reserve judgment on him until I can talk to him more. I don't really know much about his recruitment. Haven't been following him as closely as I probably should have, but I'll get him next week when he leaves to see what he has to say. I think two of the most important guys coming in this weekend will be Jeremiah Cobb and Lewis Carter, the linebacker from Tampa, down there, Jarris McIntyre neighborhood.
Well, you want to take one of them and I'll break down the other one?
I'll tell you take Lewis. If I'm not mistaken, you might run by and see old Lewis.
I might. So I guess I'll start with Carter, then you can wrap up with the local kid. But personality-wise, I love Jeremiah Cobb. What a great, wonderful young guy. He seems like. I mean, I guess you never really know. But he seems like it anyway. But Lewis Carter, again, plays at Tampa Catholic. His head coach is Jarris McIntyre, the former Auburn receiver. His linebackers coach is a former Auburn player. Very good player who was on there. Of course, the name's slipping me. Dontavius, help me out here.
Thomas, DT. Dontavius Thomas.
Yes.
Right?
And yes. And who was he from? Perry, Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. So that's his linebackers coach, but they are not shoving Auburn down his throat. They're not pushing him to Auburn. People may say, well, why not? Why not? Everybody else.
Dontarius Thomas.
There you go. Dontarius Thomas. And so and that was before I covered Auburn. So everybody forgive me there, but why wouldn't you force, Auburn on a kid if you went to that school? Well, the obvious reason is you don't want to push him away. You want the kid to organically figure out where he wants to be. But here's where it does help. If he has questions about Auburn, those 2 guys can be a sounding board to him. So it's still advantageous. Trust me. It's still advantageous. And he's only visited Auburn once, Lewis Carter. The schools that are recruiting him the hardest, I would say, are North Carolina and Oklahoma. North Carolina very much in it. Mac Brown has made a priority out of the state of Florida and Georgia as well. So they're very much in it. And then Oklahoma, because Brent Venables, the Sooners head coach, when he was the DC, the defensive coordinator at Clemson, he offered Carter, and they have maintained that relationship. So if all the head coaches, all the schools recruiting him, among the head coaches, he's the closest with Venables. So those are the 2 schools to watch. But this is Auburn's chance. Again, he's only been to Auburn once. He'll be back this weekend. If it goes real well, there'll be a sugar high off this visit. Auburn has done well at Tampa Catholic before. Now, Devin Barrett before, again, what a guy did in college is irrelevant for these conversations.
Sure, right.
We're talking strictly about the recruitment. Nate Craig Myers and Devin Barrett were very good players. They Auburn beat out Florida for Devin Barrett and beat out everybody for Nate Craig Myers, the receiver. So they have had success in Tampa and at Tampa Catholic before. But this visit's key because he does not really know Brian Harsin that well. He loves Christian Robinson, the linebackers coach. Jeff Schmedding's been down to that school, the defensive coordinator at Auburn, twice, from what I'm told. But now it's up to Harsin to size this guy up and vice versa. And if that goes well, Auburn very well could get very much into the mix because the kid does like Christian Robinson a lot, as does everybody I've ever met, quite frankly. We used to say, Jeff, there may be never a nicer coach than Tim Horton at Auburn.
Right.
Christian Robinson may give Timmy H a little run.
He's definitely in contention, no doubt.
Yeah.
Keith, real quick side note.
Yeah.
You brought up Nate Craig Myers. Dude, was he not committed to Colorado State at some point?
I think after he might have played there.
Okay.
After he left Auburn, he's been to different places, Colorado State, UCF, So anyway, the other guy's Jeremiah Cobb. I'm going to let you do all the talking on this one.
Well, Jeremiah Cobb, to me, the number one running back on the board, has been for quite a while. Cadillac Williams loves this guy, and he loves Cadillac Williams. I thought he might be an early commitment, and he still might be, but I think he's kind of gone quiet. Now, Clemson has come into this. A lot of other schools have too. He's kind of like the Brock Glenn, right? You've seen a lot of schools kind of jump in, get in on him. He went to Clemson, I think, 2 weeks ago, same weekend as Hunter Osborne, D. Creighton. It was Clemson's huge weekend. I think they had close to 30 visitors, 30 official visitors, got some commitments out of that. Had some guys cancel Auburn visits because of that weekend. D. Creighton didn't come. I don't think he's publicly committed to Clemson yet, but there's a reason he didn't come to Auburn. Same for Hunter Osborne. Hunter Osborne went to Clemson. Went to Alabama too, didn't he, last week? And ended up canceling his Auburn visit. So Auburn will keep recruiting those guys, but it looks like they've got a lot of work to do. Jeremiah Cobb, 5'11", 6 foot, 190 pounds. Auburn loves that he can catch the ball. He's a big back. He can run. Really like his entire football game. I think you wrote about this, Keith, his relationship with Cadillac. Cadillac's been there. He's done that. He's gone to where Jeremiah Cobb wants to go. Auburn's close to home, about a 45-minute drive from home, which can be beneficial for some of these kids. And Auburn needs running backs.
Yeah.
So,
you got that right.
He hasn't been back to Auburn, even though he's been close. I think he came back in the spring for an unofficial visit. So getting him back on campus this weekend, I think, will be big, kind of a refresher. But this will be he's been here. He came in March. He came in twice in April, and so he hasn't been back in, I guess, 2 months. But so getting him back for an official will be big, especially if Cadillac can spend all the one-on-one time he can with him. I don't know where he stands on Clemson's board. Keith, any idea on that?
I don't. I think I read somewhere that they'd like to take 2 running backs as well, though, and we know Auburn would like to take 2. But Clemson, Clemson's Clemson. They've got some recruiting prowess right now. But again, I feel like, and we continue to hear that Auburn feels like it's in the best position. We'll see. Like they think they're in a really good position. We'll see. But it used to be kind of panic time if a local kid wasn't visiting you every weekend, right? You'd get a little freaked out. Well, why are they going here and why is he not coming? My school's so close. But then you had guys like Rashaan Evans and Justin Ross that were at Auburn every weekend, and it didn't matter. So again, we can't. You follow the visits, but you also follow the intel too. And the intel is that Auburn likes where it sits. They're very, very comfortable with that. Cadillac is a relationships guy. Tank Bigsby's going to be there 1 more year, so people see the opportunity, and it's close to home. So I mean, there's a lot of factors working in Auburn's favor.
Love it. Another big weekend, and we will be there to provide all the coverage, man. Keith's been fantastic, man, running the home base, the HQ from down in Jortland. But we will be back.
By the way, this is a big baseball game tonight, I guess, huh?
Oh, man, I tell you what, I conked out last night. I think it was 4-2 when I went to sleep, and got up this morning and saw that Auburn had fallen short 4-3. But I tell you what, now you've got the best pitcher out of the way, right?
Yeah.
Chance to, one game. One game.
I'll take real quick, Jeff.
Yeah.
When we go to these Auburn football games, we stand on the sideline before the game, sometimes during the game, late in the game, and Butch Thompson will always come up and just hang out for a little while. And he is as genuine of a college coach, and not all baseball coaches are like that. I'm just going to point that out.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And on a personal level, he's a guy that I like to see do well, just because he gets the relationship stuff. He's friendly. He's just a friendly guy. That's it. That's all it takes sometimes. Just be nice, right?
And he's a personal favorite of mine, man. I've known him for a few years. Going back to, early in his career, he was a junior college coach at Jeff State. Then he went to Birmingham Southern.
Well,
Coached
I'd
couple
heard
of my
that
friends.
there's a story out there that you got a hit off his staff one time, and that whole weekend he spent was up all night kind of reevaluating his life. We gave up a hit to Jeff Lee. This may not be the career path I need to be going on, but he stuck it out, and look at him now.
Hey, he asked me when he got here. He's like, "Man, you still got some eligibility left, don't you?"
I think I remember that. I think we were down sitting there together in the building. But no, so that'll be an exciting game night. But Jeff,
awesome guy.
Yeah, man. Hey, I appreciate the welcome you guys have given me, and hope everybody's enjoying the coverage.
I'm sure they are, man. We're going to keep doing it, and I tell you what, Keith, we won't put a time or date on this. We'll just try to make these things happen.
Yeah.
Me and you get on here when we can, when there's something to talk about, when we've got something to say. Definitely enjoy your time. Appreciate the oil change guy.
Man, they were great. We're all done. Synthetic oil. We're all updated. I can start driving around now and taking photos from South Beach and texting them to you. Okay.
Yeah. Just don't let Jessica find out. Oh, hey guys! Again, if you're not a member of the site Auburn Live on 3, we've got a great deal going on right now. 1 year for $1. It's incredible. All the stuff. Myself, Keith, Cole, Justin. We've got everything covered from recruiting through basketball, through baseball. We got it all. And another big weekend, man. This will be a great time to sign up. But thanks for joining us. For Keith Niebuhr, I'm Jeffrey Lee, man. See you.
Thanks, guys.